So
Uh,
my name is Deeds. I also learned from yesterday that I need to make sure I'm enunciating better. So technically, this is our second try at this case because my cat, the infamous Bing Bong, Bingo, was her name-o. And she's lucky she's not unhomoed because that sounds wrong.
yeah.
Unhomed because she messed up our recording yesterday. Um, so we have to redo everything, but that's okay. I'm fine. I don't mind talking. But to clarify something from the last episode, I meant the SEC, not the SCC or the FCC, the Security Exchange Commission. Just so people know. Well, backstory I explained to you yesterday. When I was younger, I had speech problems. I mumbled a lot because my tonsils were too big, and sometimes I get into a habit because my mouth gets lazy from talking a lot, and it's an old habit, and sometimes I need to be more cognizant, and I apologize. I will work on my enunciation a little better.
Doesn't help that all three of those acronyms that you listed off all pretty much sounded exactly identical.
And I also talk fast as a native New Yorker, so sometimes it's not even just the mumbling, it's the audio can't pick up as fast as I'm going, so it just gets mumbled together.
Yeah.
So I have to slow down and enunciate, which two things New Yorkers don't do. Luckily, I can kick my accent 90% of the time.
I mean, that's just most of the Northeast, honestly.
Yeah, but like that Long Island, like when
Oh
I
yeah.
talk,
You
when I'm
guys
not
mangle the English language.
when I was in college, I lived on a co-ed floor my freshman year, and there was a guy's room, and one of the guys was from California, and he got a kick out of listening to me talk.
Oh,
It's
absolutely. The way we talk out here is considered a speech impediment out there.
well, because they talk so much slower in California, but also he explained to me that New Yorkers, specifically like New York City, the 5 boroughs, and Long Island, we don't we widen our vowels instead of elongating.
Hmm. Okay.
So,
That's the first
like,
I've heard.
L Long Island, like the infamous joke that we say Long Island instead of Long
Okay.
Island, is not even like,
That's funny.
my best, like, way to explain it to people is Addison is straight up Springfield. Like, she's grown up here,
Yeah.
she's only ever lived here, 90% of the people she communicates with are from here. But then you throw me in the mix, her mother, who she's around 50% of the time,
And it
dad
has to
50%.
slip out at home too.
And
The
so
accent, that is.
and she's been in speech therapy since she was 18 months old. So she's had someone actively teaching her how to properly pronounce things from a year and a half.
Yeah.
So she had to be like 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6 at the most. And we were walking somewhere, and I said, "Oh, baby, look at the hawk." Those words are the ones that I cannot mask. Like, all and that
The
usually
hawk.
hawk. There's a W.
Yeah.
A hawk.
That's
Hawk.
like you're hawking something.
So she looks at me. Love her to death. She looks at me and she goes, "Mommy, it's a hawk. Hawk. Hawk." There's no double. Like, she's this little child is correcting me on how I say something. And that's sort of like my moment of like, okay, so I have a New Englander child, not a Long Islander child.
Yes.
And like, I was always aware of my accent. So like outside of Long Island, I will mask it very well. Most
Yeah.
people don't realize that I have a Long Island accent, and they'll ask me where I'm from. Or even better, they ask, "Oh, what high school did you go to?" I'm like, "Oh, I didn't go to school around here." Like, "Oh, where?" Like, "Long Island." Like, "Oh, you don't sound like you're from Long Island." But I know.
That's the point.
I know. Exactly. That's the point. Because I don't think you've heard me make fun of my mom
Yes.
and like 90% of my family. I have like a impersonation voice for everybody. And sometimes it's not exactly how they sound, it's how they sound in my head. But my mom is spot
Okay.
on.
All right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. No.
someone like, my inner monologue sounds like that when I'm thinking of what they're going to say to me, when I'm
Okay.
rehearsing what I'm going to say to them.
All right. Yeah.
And, like, my favorite one is my grandfather. So, he's Italian, 100%,
Okay.
but his birthday is St. Patty's Day.
Yes.
So, his, like, number 1 line on St. Patty's Day is, "I'm an Italian, born on St. Patty's Day." And, like, so now people have context of why I sound the way I sound like, and there's gonna be words that I'm gonna butcher, and in this entire case. And the funny part is that I'm talking about how I grew up, like, my grandfather's Italian. I grew up with my Italian family, so you would think that this entire case, I'd be, like, popping out names. No. No, because if you've been on TikTok at all, which I know you, I don't know what side of
Uh,
TikTok you're
I.
currently on.
We're not going to talk about that.
That's fine. What is it?
I mean, okay. I'll say this much. Just to keep it interesting. TikTok seems to think I'm a lesbian like about 50% of the time. So.
So is it BBGG? I don't know if I could say this on video. Big
I-
blank goth girls.
Oh, okay. It's BT. That's what they use
Okay.
these days.
Yeah, because one of my friends, because his preference was the underside, not the top side.
Oh, I see. I
So
see.
he would
Okay,
say
yeah.
BBGG.
Okay,
So
understandable.
so you're on that side of TikTok. I'm on the side of TikTok where, like, or maybe it's Instagram. Whichever,
I
like,
mean,
I
I
my
got
algorithms are,
I got Rhea Ripley this morning shaking her butt in someone else's face. So
I don't know who that is is, because 'cause I'm not
she's
on the BT or BBGG side of
those who
TikTok.
know what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay.
She's a WWE star.
Okay. That
Yes.
makes sense. Okay. So everything you just said now makes sense. Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
So there's, like, a whole part of TikTok where, like, Italian Americans say Italian words,
Okay.
and then, like, Italians say Italian words. And, like, there are some,
Yeah. Sorry.
there are some discrepancies in how we say things,
Yeah.
because it's like Creole versus French.
Yeah. I,
We've
I
been
I get
what?
something like that on my TikTok, but it's usually the Texan speaking German or it's somebody from Kentucky speaking Japanese.
Yeah, the Kentucky Japanese thing is doesn't make sense to me. The German Texan thing does, because a lot of immigrants from Germany came over and went there. My stepdad,
Yeah.
who is, I only refer to him as my stepdad because it confuses people when I say my dad, because they know, like, my dad is, like, completely absent from my
Mm,
existence. Like, my dad doesn't exist. So if I say my dad, they're like, "Who are you talking about?" I'm like, "You know who I'm talking about." So I say my stepdad. He's a Texan, and I wanna say, like, his nationality breakdown is, like, part of it's German, and they
okay.
came when they went to Texas and stuff like that, so he can
We're
correct me,
wildly off
and
track.
we are so wildly off track, and I'm not surprised. So this case, the whole thing is that I'm going, despite the fact that I'm from Long Island and I grew up with an Italian family, I'm going to butcher almost every name in this
Yep.
case, because it is a Vatican case, and I'm kinda sad that I don't have my gray apology hoodie on preemptively to have to apologize to YouTube for talking about the Vatican in such a way, and any comments that I make. A lot of these comments are actually, like, these people were convicted. Some of them are alleged, and people deny, so I'll clarify as we go through. You heard 99% of the case, but
Yeah.
because we're re-recording, but I put it into a better order. I went through the whole timeline that I had, and I
Yeah,
put
having
things.
to go forward and then you jump back one, and the way you were doing it, I will admit, was slightly confusing.
Yeah, so let's begin with the Vatican case. So, like I asked you yesterday, you grew up, well, not grew up, but, like, your family was Catholic, right?
Yeah, my grandparents were on my mother's side, and so, I mean, after my mother kept trying to get us more involved in it, and yes, I was baptized, but I mean, I don't involve myself with any of that at all at this point in my life.
Neither do I, except for this one case. So, the Vatican, as of December of last year, convicted 9 people of varying degrees of embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, abuse of power, extortion, and it all started
That's weak.
2013 was the incendiary event, the purchase of the luxury apartments. So with the Vatican, what they have to do is they take all of our offerings. I say our, like I go to church every weekend, and I don't. All the offerings from church, and it goes into the Holy See, or Peter's Pence, which is like just the collection of donations, which
The basket.
are not. It's the basket. I have a funny story for you once I'm done with this. They take that and they put it into investments to make more money, to be able to pay for everything.
Yeah.
They pay for their living expenses. On top of that, they also pay for different charities and stuff.
Okay.
So 2013, the Secretary of State for the Vatican decides to invest 200 million euros in a fund operated by Raphael Miniconi, and half of it is for this property, and the other half is for other investments. Okay. 2015, Cecilia Maragona, she began to be a security advisor, kind of. Like they hired her to help with Vatican security issues. It's really like at the beginning, she's like, "Hey, you guys have issues with your security, and you should pay me to help fix them."
Fair
So
enough.
she stayed on as a security consultant, which
As one does.
ends up to bite ends up to bite them in the ass. So 2017, that's when the Colombian nun is kidnapped by the Al Qaeda linked militants in Mali. That's Sister Gloria Cecilia, not to be confused with the other person we just talked about, Navarez. So Margonia works to help get the nun freed, and the Pope approves $1 million to hire a British intelligence firm. And so Margonia is communicating with this British intelligence firm who she's not working with directly. Like, she's not working for them. She's getting paid, and everything's going into a holding company based in Slovenia, which is a country east of Italy.
Okay.
She even said that the money that the Pope gave her was not meant as ransom, that it would cost about $17 million to free this nun.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the meantime, Margonia is also helping in getting like relics either back from countries that they were lent out to, or negotiating sending relics back to their repatriate them.
Okay.
So like between
There's a lot of
Russia,
moving parts so far.
yeah, a lot like Russian, Greek, a whole bunch of she's just communicating with all the people. So 2018, that's when the luxury apartments and the other investments controlled by Minicone lost $18 million.
Wow.
So the Vatican is pumping out money and not bringing it in.
Yeah.
So they already spent 200. 18 million of those euros were lost out of that.
Yep.
They already handed over $1 million to pay for British intelligence through Maragonia, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So 2018, after they lose 18 million, is when they get Gianni Luigi, which is the name itself makes me want to laugh. I understand it's probably a family name, but
He's
whatever.
the 17th Gianni Luigi in that family.
Probably. Gianluigi Torzi, he's acting as a broker of the Vatican, and he plays the role of the middleman. So he's trying to help them get control over that London property. So now Miniconi says, hey, you pay me 40 million euros to get control of this company. And the plan goes, okay, we're going to pay Torzi. Torzi is going to pay Miniconi. Then we're going to get the ownership of this property put into a holding company owned by Torzi called Gut. Probably saying that wrong. Like, it's spelled Gut. We went over this yesterday.
Yeah, it's like probably like
but it's spelled Gut, Guttsa.
Yep.
And the SA is separate from the gut part. So let's call it Gut from now on. And then Torzi is going to hand the shares over. So the process between getting the property owned by Torzi's holding company and giving those shares to the Vatican, in between there is when the share structure for the holding company is changed without the Vatican knowing. These voting shares were created solely to have control over the company. The other shares were given to the Vatican. They only had enough to get dividends paid out.
Yeah.
On this property.
Those are the money makers, essentially.
Future Ashley here. I forgot to add to this case that Torzi had tried to extort the Vatican for an additional 15 million euros to give control over the voting shares. So just adding that here, a little sprinkle to this whole saga. Yeah. So that's what kind of goes down. And during that time, Fabrizio Triabasi, he's a company director. Now, who is this guy? This guy is a lay official in the administrative office of the Secretariat of State at the Vatican. Conflict of interest?
Just a little.
None of this is going to... I don't think anything in this case surprises you because you're like, it's the Vatican. Are we really surprised?
Vatican and capitalism are they go hand in hand at this point.
Right. So this guy, Fabrizio, I'm still calling him Fabrizio. He's the company director, sorry. And he left a month after the deal was finalized to go back to the Vatican.
Okay. Wow.
He literally stayed to
didn't
organize
want to make it too
this,
obvious.
Right. And then he went to the Vatican. And he was at the Vatican until 20. Also, during this process of getting the property back to the Vatican, Fabrizio allegedly offered prostitutes to Gianluigi while working on the deal. And he bragged about the power he had over senior clergy, like Becciu, which we will talk about as he starts to get involved in this case, because Becciu is a big part. He's like the Prince William of this whole thing. So imagine at the Vatican. So we're gonna use pop culture references. King Charles is the Pope. Becciu, at the time this is all going down, was Prince William. He was yeah. So Cardinal Angelo Becciu, he's gonna come up very soon because he's a big part of everything. We're in 2018.
Yes.
And I apologize because we're gonna have to kind of rewind a little bit, because in 2019, Cardinal Pietro Parolin leans on a Vatican bank to refinance this whole mortgage with the London deal for the luxury apartments. Yeah, because it was incredibly high interest, and he needed help, and that alerted the financial authorities at the Vatican. So in 2014, that's when Pope Francis said, hey, we need to have more transparency. So he decided to slowly take the financial authority away from the Secretariat of the State, and he made the Secretariat of the Economy, which was headed by Cardinal Pell. And Pell and Becciu went head to head. Now, Becciu was, at the time when he went head to head with Pell, he wasn't a cardinal yet. Now, was he a cardinal? He wasn't a cardinal yet. And then he was asked, like, his whole department, per se, was gonna be audited, and he didn't wanna be audited. Why not? So he told them, "No, you're not
Yeah.
gonna do
Who
this.
does?
If you don't have anything to hide, you don't mind an audit." But for Pell,
Yeah.
he went to the Pope and said, "Hey, you need to make this happen. We need to audit everybody. Everybody needs to be audited." So eventually, bet you they had to do the audit. He became a cardinal, and he was in charge of canonizing saints. I didn't even know they still made saints nowadays, but I also don't go to church. I'm fully
Yeah.
I've been baptized. I made my first Holy Communion and confirmed within the church. I go to church if someone
Wow.
is born, married, or dies. That's it. Those three. So if you want me to go and I like you, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
So yeah, Betchu was in charge of canonizing saints. He was
Yes.
also the acting Secretary of State during a large portion of this London property kerfuffle. He was also the connection
Okay.
between
Yeah.
Montagna, which that didn't really come
Yep.
to light until 20. So
Okay.
in 2020, 5 officials were suspended or dismissed from their positions due to the 2019 inquiry into the finances, and that's when they discovered the whole London property deal. I almost said Lunderdy. Lunderdy property deal?
Under
That's a mouthful.
the. Yep.
Also, Bingo looks like she's about to cause some chaos, so if you hear anything, I apologize. Alright, so 2020, the Pope that's when he stripped the Secretary of State of its financial portfolio and ordered control over to the administration of the patrimony of the Holy See. Not C as in like ocean, C as in like ICU.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the Holy See is the money. That's where all the money goes. It's also known as Peter's Pence.
Okay.
So a lot of things happened in 2020 aside from the Rona.
Yeah.
So the Pope approaches Betchu, and this is when Betchu's involvement becomes public.
Okay.
Because he approaches Betchu to resign from his position, doing all the saint stuff and Secretary of State stuff,
Yeah.
and resign his rights as a cardinal. And the Pope allegedly, according to Betchu, said, "I no longer have trust in you." To hear the Pope, like if you're a Catholic and the Pope says that to you, that is like, that's worse than your mom looking at, well, maybe worse than like grandma looking at you saying like, "I am disappointed." What?
Yeah.
Like, you wanna cripple me? Have my grandmother tell me that she is disappointed in me. I will probably cry. Even, like, when there are times when my grandma and I have not been talking and we've gotten into a fight, if, like, she had said that to somebody, "Oh, I'm disappointed in Ashley," and it got back to me, I'd be, "Excuse me? What did I do? How can I fix it?"
Yeah. Right.
So, the Pope tells Betchu, "I no longer have trust in you." Literally the next day, Betchu goes to a press conference to announce that he's resigning, tells people the Pope no longer trusts me, and he's like, "I didn't do any of this." And he also it came out that he used nepotism to send money to his brother, allegedly to his nonprofit organization in Sardinia. And he said the money was used for the diocese on the Italian island of Sardinia to help people suffering from unemployment. And it was 100,000 euros, which is nothing compared to everything else. But then he also, in the same breath, not the same breath, but to other people said it was like 300,000 euros. Like,
Huh.
what is it? Is it 100 or is it 300? It's a big difference.
Yeah.
One is 1/3 of the other. So
And the other's 3 times the other one.
yes, 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Yeah. All this is starting to come to head. People have lost their jobs. People are asked to resign from their positions, blah, 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 which, like,
Yeah.
this coming out in and of itself is like, wow. Because the Vatican doesn't let anything out. They
Yeah.
don't tell diddly squat. So at the beginning, I told you there was 9 people convicted of crimes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Technically, there was 10 people charged. And in
Oh,
2020, those people were starting to get arrested. So, I'm just going to rattle off 10 names to you. Okay.
do it.
Cardinal Angelo Becciu, Cecilia Moragagna, Raphael Miniconi, Gianni Luigi, and my stupid thing decided that I wanted to write again. Monsignor Maro Carlino, Fabrizio Triabasi, Nicola Sequeles, Enrico Crasso, Rene Brulhart, and Tomato de Ruza. Those are the 10 people that the Vatican brought up on charges with a 487-page indictment. And this case took 2.5 years to try.
Which you'd think it'd be longer.
The only reason why it took so long, not even, it took 2 years to investigate.
Yeah.
So it took so long because the complexity of the Vatican court. And yesterday we talked about this, that the Vatican uses Italian judges.
Yes.
And so pretty much it was at whenever they could show up.
Yep.
Like, hey,
It
I
was.
have this. Yeah. Hey, do you have free time? Yeah, I have free time. I can clear out my schedule. Obviously, this is done in Italian and not in English, but yeah. So they would meet up and they'd have trial for the day. Witnesses come up, blah blah blah. But you're trying to coordinate a trial not only with these foreign judges, because technically the Vatican is its own country.
Yes.
So Italian judges are foreign. These foreign judges who have to also take into account that they are not following Italian law. They are following Vatican law.
Yes.
And some things are different. So they have to constantly remind themselves, and okay, this is not Italy. This is the Vatican. This is not Italy. This is the Vatican. But it's also an honor, especially
Yeah.
if you're a Catholic Italian living in Italy
Yeah.
and you're again, this is you're being brought in for the pro ball game. You're a football player and you're playing you don't watch sports, but still. The pro ball game is it's not the Super Bowl, but it's the pro ball game. So they're acknowledging that you're great and everybody's watching. So on top of that complexity, Cardinal Becciu is the first cardinal ever to stand actual trial in
Wow.
front of a tribunal. Yeah. So prior to Becciu, if you were a cardinal brought up on charges at the Vatican, you sat in front of tribunal of cardinals. You sat
Yeah.
amongst your peers. And that doesn't, for a
Yeah.
lack of better terms, that's not kosher, at least to me.
Yeah. It's
You're
funny that that's the
having,
wording you chose.
as I said, it's for a lack of better terms, it's
Yeah.
not kosher. It's definitely not kosher, period, but still. But it's like asking your besties or your siblings to tell you that you did something wrong
Yeah.
when they've probably done it too.
Yeah.
So along with the whole thing about the finances, Pope Francis was like, "Hey, you're going to go stand trial with everybody else. You're going to sit with those 9 other people because we're having transparency here. We're trying because at the time, attendance was down, donations were down. It's also 2020. So people
Yeah.
weren't going to church anyway. But prior to 2020, they still had a bad reputation. They've had a bad reputation for centuries
Yeah.
of, enabling bad behavior, not holding people accountable for bad behavior, sweeping things under the rug, hiding things. So Pope Francis was like, hey, for the sake of transparency, you're doing it this way. I don't care.
Makes sense.
I don't care who you are. Again, prior to all of this, he was the Prince William to King Charles. He was being slated to be the
Yeah.
next pope.
To just
So
throw it all away.
once this, but yeah. So once this all hit, that's when everything came out about Maragonia because they're like, why is this lady being brought on trial? She has nothing to do with the London deal. That was the main focal point. She's not a part of the charities with his brother.
Yep.
Who is she? Why is she here? And at the time, the nun that we talked about, when everybody was arrested, she was still kidnapped. and in captivity. Oh, bingo. She was still in being held by these militants in Mali.
Oh my god. Wow.
Yeah, I forgot
Didn't
to
even
mention
get
that
her out.
yesterday to think about it, yeah.
Wow.
So, oh, bingo. She's just on a tear. So, yeah, so when all these people are arrested, they still don't understand what Cecilia Maragon, why is she here?
Yeah.
And in the indictment, it all comes out like, okay, so she was paid money to get this nun out, but the nun is still being held. She's still kidnapped. So what good are you?
So
And
she just
she tried to
pocketed
like
it.
say, "Hey, that's what they alleged that like, hey, you got this $1 million transferred into your account and you've had all this money over time transferred. Like,
Euros.
what are you doing?" Ugh. If I say dollars, I mean euros. Okay? Just put it out there. So when when all of this comes out, people are trying to figure out what the hell is this lady doing? Like, we understand all 9 others were involved in this deal with London. We understand Betchew was involved with London, but he was also involved in the nepotism issue and trying to cover everything up. Where does this lady come in? So it came out that she was paid the money
Yeah.
and half, so that $1 million that went to British intelligence, half of it went to her, to the holding company. So this British
Oh,
intelligence company got half.
so they both
So
just made
yeah,
a
so
nice little
her
paycheck. Called
yeah,
it a
so
day.
she took it as payment of being a consultant, and the intention was to be for ransom, or at least according to articles, the understanding was that that $1 million, the Pope approved it because he thought that that was going to be paid to free the nun. And she said, no, no, no. And, like, during all this that's coming out in the trial, "No, no, no, it's gonna cost 17 million." Eventually, while they're all on trial, the nun is freed from her captives, and she returns to her home in Colombia. Everything is better, everything is hunky dory, and she is now, hopefully, still safely in Colombia doing her
Yeah.
nun stuff. I don't know what nuns do, but help the poor people, maybe?
Yeah.
So apparently that 500,000 euros, see, I remember this time, euros,
Yeah.
was used for Prada bags, luxury vacations,
Just turned me into a
bing bang
soundboard.
boom. It's like, I was gonna get a Garrett soundboard.
There you go.
Wow. There you go. Hit buttons.
Just
So
wheezing laugh.
this lady did what people do. Like when you get a paycheck, she spent it on shit.
You
But
gotta treat yourself.
other things came out. Trees.
Treat yourself.
I can't. Yeah, I was gonna try to come up with something else, but everything else that came in my head was inappropriate and probably would get me. Um, if I did eventually put this as a video on anything, it would get it taken down. So we're not gonna do that today, at least. So a lot came out about Cecilia Maragonia and her relationship with Cardinal Becciu. What no former Cardinal Becciu, because he can't even, like, after this trial, he can't even show his face at church.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't want to. No. So, she was allegedly spending nights at Becciu's like, private home.
Ooh, scandalous.
Yeah, where all the other cardinals live. And, like, that's not a actually, I can't say alleged because it was actually true. Because she took pictures.
Wow.
She took pictures of, like, "This feels like home. I love being here, blah, blah, blah." So,
Yikes.
that there was that Australian article, right? And they kinda, like, made it sound like it was this illicit love affair, and people think that it was, that they were having an affair, and she was this femme fatale, and this poor cardinal old man, he was, like, 73, like, he he can't resist her and her femme fatale ways. But in the same article, they interviewed her ex, and he was just like, "This is news to me." She was never like this. She didn't have, like, I don't know where she has no formal education on she's your con man. She is the ideal con man in this whole scenario.
Yes. Yeah.
And
She's nobody.
she just yeah, but she had the confidence. And that's what a con man is a confidence man. A good
The
con is
audacity.
you believe in your lies, and that's what she did. She believed all of
You
her lies,
have the
and so
audacity.
I have the audacity. I have the audacity to come on here. But no, like, I have if you're interested, I have a book called The Confidence Game, and I think you would like it because it goes down to, like, the root psychology of what makes a con man and what makes people susceptible and how they pull it off. And essentially, they go in and they charm the pants off of you. But
Mhm.
people and, like, with the church, she created an issue. You have security problems that they didn't
Yeah.
know about. These are people who, for the majority of their lives, have been at the church. Their main focus was God and other things. But that's the fact of the matter is that, like, they don't know security. They trust other people to do that. So this lady is coming in here all confident and stuff saying that we have issues. All right, well, we'll pay you. You fix them. And so Betchu paid Maragonia to do all these things. She did the nun thing, the relics, and she said she did a whole bunch of stuff. But at the same time, she was staying at his house, well, his apartment or his place within, like, the wherever cardinals
Yeah.
decide
The
to go. It's like a
roost.
part of the they have a part, like a palace where they all live, which is really weird.
It'd be really funny if they called it the roost.
You know what? We're gonna call it the Roost. She'll go to the Roost. She'd stay the night. So, like, all these things started coming out. They'd go on these, like, luxury vacations together. So she pulled off the perfect con. So get to the trial. You have 10 people sitting there. There's a lot of things that happened so quickly that they didn't have a place to fit in the timeline. So I couldn't really, like, here,
Okay.
this happened then and this happened then. But all these defendants, with the exception of, like, of Cecilia Margagna, were involved in getting the deal started to it getting brought to the Vatican financial authorities. So,
Okay.
bet we went over Becciu.
Hmm.
Raphael Miniconi, he's the guy who started it all. He's like, I have this awesome investment. It's huge. It's huge. I have this awesome investment. They were actually going to invest in something else. And Becciu I believe it was Becciu who was the one who said, nah, screw it.
Send
We're
it.
just going to go. We're going to go with these London apartments. And it's either Becciu or a different cardinal that started, and then he resigned from the position and Becciu took over and then was the one pushing all these things through. So it's all cardinals.
Yeah.
So then you have Torzi, who's a broker. Monsignor Maro Carlino, he was also involved. He got brought up on charges for abuse of office. So pushing things through that shouldn't have been pushed through. Fabrizio, we talked about him.
Yep.
And he was just the layperson. And he's probably the most suspicious out of all of them. Nicolas Sequeles, he's the lawyer and former advisor of the Secretary of State. So he was behind going, yeah, do it. Come on, let's do it. And he's also been convicted for a role in bankruptcy of another company in Italy, Novaceta, which is pending an appeal of a 6.5-year sentence. Enrico Crasso is the former investment manager for the Secretary of State. Rene Bruhart and Tamato de Ruza, they didn't stop the payment from going through. So they had the power to stop the Vatican from doing this, and they didn't. So they tried to say, like, well, who are we to tell the Pope no? So as collectively, they were all sentenced to 73 years collectively, and there was 180 million euros confiscated and 200 million euros in payments to the Vatican for civil damages. So we're gonna go through one more time. We did it yesterday. but we're going to go over potential
Yep.
versus actual, okay? And if you have any
Yep.
questions, feel free to stop me and ask. So we're going to start with our golden boy, Cardinal Angelo Beccio. My favorite one of all. I think he should have got more. I think you said that yesterday. Like, he probably should have gotten more. This was supposed to
Oh
be,
yeah,
like, this.
I think they went easy on him because they were mostly old people.
He's 73.
They probably went easy on most of them because most of them were older.
That and, like, for Beccio, he was going to become the Pope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
So
that's
there was probably
as a cardinal, you're like, your goal is Pope. You're like, I want to become Pope. That's end game right there. Like, you're like,
yeah.
I want that little hat. Like a Euro trip. They're like, oh no, the Pope is dead. And like 2 seconds later, they picked a new Pope. And then it's just the doofy guy. And he comes out and he's like, I'm the new Pope. That would never happen.
Wow. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Well,
Yeah.
what? You've never seen Eurotrip? I'm gonna give you homework. You need to go watch Eurotrip.
Okay.
It is like just it's stupid humor. And if you don't like it, then you'll never have to watch it again. You could say that movie was trash, Ashley. I'm never
True.
watching it ever again. Okay, bet you down. The prosecutor was asking for 7 years, 3 months of prison with 14 million in fines. He ended up facing 5.5 years in jail for embezzlement and fraud. He's also banned from holding a public office. So, if you think he's 73, he's going to be almost 79 by the time this cat. Stop
Yep.
it! Almost 79. He's almost 79 by the time he gets out of jail. And they also have like their jail at the Vatican is so small. So like I read an article. They were like, we don't know how they're gonna house all these people for this amount of time. So I think that's why part of them got shorter sentences is because like we don't know where we're gonna put y'all.
To move them through faster. It's
Yeah.
funny.
So Cecilia Maragona, her potential sentence was 4 or more years, no fines. She ended up getting 3 years and 9 months for embezzlement. Rafael Menacone, potential sentence of 11 years, 5 months with hefty fines. Final ruling, 5.5 years on embezzlement and money laundering. Gianni Luigi Torzi, that's the broker dude, his potential sentence was 7 years, 6 months, hefty fines, got 6 years for extortion. Monsignor Mauro, this is where like the Long Island in me comes out. Mauro, Mauro, Mauro. Carlino, potential.
Yeah.
5 years, 4 months. He was acquitted. He is our only acquitted person out of all 10. Because he was like, I don't know how you're going to prove that I did this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabrizio, 13 years and 3 months. And nearly 100 million euros in fines was the potential charge. The final ruling, 7.5 years for extortion and money laundering. But his charges were corruption, extortion, embezzlement, abuse of office, money laundering,
Yeah.
and fraud. Like,
But
he
he
only
still
got
got
2.
off with like half the time and no money.
See, and that, well, we don't know. They didn't mention anything about the civil damages because the civil damages could have been fines. Not fines, but like, so instead of paying, but the Vatican is the government. That makes no sense. Now that I'm thinking about it, 200 million euros in civil damages, like, those could be fines too.
Yeah.
But I guess the Vatican also lost, like, it doesn't matter. It's 6, one way, half a dozen the other. It's still going to the government. It's still going to the Vatican. But anyway, now I'm flustered by this because that makes no sense. Civil damages for the Vatican, you're the government. You just hit them with fines. So stupid. So stupid.
Could be
Nicola
that they were able to
Sutherland's
get more out of them that way, though.
True, because the amount of money that this all adds up to is not, like, the potential fines doesn't add up to the, what is it, 180 in
I mean, the
property and 200.
the one guy who had a potential of like 100 million, like that would
That
have
was
been a
Fabrizio.
significant amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was only half of what they got in civil damages. So I get it, they were able to the other way they got more money, because they were limited as a government to say, "Hey, these are the fines that you could face." Whatever. I'm not in the Vatican, I don't live in the
Yeah.
Vatican, thank God. Yeah, that's ironic.
Mm.
For someone who doesn't believe in God, I say thank God a lot. Sorry
Oh,
to all
right?
of my
Oh
friends
my god.
sorry to all my friends' parents that I love that I might offend or have offended with my statements. I love you. We were on Nicholas Nicholas. So he was facing the
Yes.
6 years, potential 6 years, 1,000,000 in fines. He actually got a suspended sentence of 1 year, 10 months. But that's also because he is currently facing the appeal in the Italian courts. So if that appeal doesn't go, like if that doesn't go through, he's going to be sitting in Italian jail for 6.5 years. And then the Vatican can go, hey, when he's done, you still have this time to serve. We suspended it, but we're not anymore.
I've
Hey, I don't make the rules. Don't embezzle money. Don't help people embezzle money. That's all I gotta say. Okay. Enrico Crasso, that's the former investment manager. He was facing 9 years, 9 months. He actually got 7 years for embezzlement and other charges. They didn't list the other charges, but like the only two that I could find were money laundering and fraud. So I'm assuming those are the other
Okay.
charges.
Yeah.
So I feel bad
Miscellaneous
for
within them.
miscellaneous fraud.
Mhm.
I feel the worst for Renee Brulhart and Tomato. His name is spelled tomato. Tomato DeRuza. Tomato DeRuza. Whatever. DeRuza. I feel bad for those two. Because those are the ones who said, like, who am I to tell the Pope no? So
Yeah.
Renee, his potential was a month and 15 million euros in fines. He ended up paying a fine of 2,000 euros for failure to report suspicious transactions. And Tomato was facing up to 4 years with a 15 million euro fine, and he got the same, the 2,000 euro fine. I still feel bad for them because,
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
they
those are the contracts that you sign when you start working at like any information security job that has security
yeah.
on what goes in and out. Like that's part of the contract. It's like under injury of X amount of fines. Like, do you accept this job and not decide to screw it up?
Is one of your is your cat causing chaos, or are you just knocking things over yourself?
I'm knocking things over myself. My room's kind of a mess, as you can tell.
It's actually not that
I have a
it's
trash
it's not that
can
bad.
underneath my desk here, and I keep bumping it.
So, the aftermath of this case, not only are people now like the Vatican is starting to hold people accountable, cool. What about the Pope during all of this?
Yeah,
Because
his
was
signature had to be on a
he
lot of stuff, or
yeah,
stamp,
was he
whatever
as
he
ignorant?
uses.
Probably a seal? A seal maybe, right? I would think a seal.
Something. He
Like,
definitely has some sort of mark.
right. Like, how ignorant to everything can he honestly be? That's the question that is just I wanna
I
say,
wouldn't be
like,
surprised if nothing happens.
I wouldn't be surprised either, because people are all about accountability until they have to hold themselves accountable, right? You have cops that, in the news all not in the news all the time, but, like, you have cops who take an oath, and then they, their kid is arrested for drunk driving, and they get them off. Like, you're taking an oath to uphold the law, but
Yeah.
your kid breaks the law, it could potentially kill somebody because 'cause they're driving, like, a 2-ton weapon while inebriated. That's okay. You're gonna get them off on that. Slap on the wrist. "Don't do it again, honey."
Rules for thee and
So
not for me.
right, so that's, like, the big question now is, will the Pope face his own charges and his own investigation on everything that went down, and anything else that comes out? Because bet you which I don't think I mentioned it. He was also, like, brought under investigation for, bribes and witness tampering for an Australian case where Pell, the cardinal who was trying to get, him to do the audit, Pell
Hmm.
faced a case of diddling little children and was convicted, but it came out that it was an act like, people were being paid to falsely testify, and allegedly Betchu was behind
Oh,
it because Betchu had an axe to grind with Pell. So,
see.
there's a lot that's come like, I feel like people don't realize that once you open Pandora's box, there's a reason why it's hard to close. There's a lot in Vatican
Yeah,
history that people don't acknowledge, and there's a lot in Catholic history that people don't acknowledge. So, I think that there would be
absolutely.
more to yeah. But do you have any questions?
Um, no, I don't think so. This was pretty straightforward, I would say. I mean, just a lot of people doing
Yeah,
a lot of stuff for money.
as they all do.
I mean,
Oh, what I was gonna
yep.
sorry, like, backtrack real quick on the Pope thing because Bingo distracted me when I was gonna bring it up. That, like, in this book, The Confidence Game, which, again, highly recommend. I'll probably put it in the show notes, the name of the author and all that. She talks about how, like, the con man doesn't always have to be confident either. Like, the Pope playing this, "I'm old, I don't know anything," could be part of the con.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
he's just gonna pretend like he didn't know. "I'm some
Yeah,
old dude." He spent most of his life in South America. So, as far as capitalism goes, they're not it's not like they're not privy to capitalism, but they're not as in depth as Europe is or America. The amount of fraud that occurs in America, there's a reason
yeah,
why we have our own accounting standards and we have all these American things and all these the SEC to make sure that people are being held accountable. Like Enron, all that. So I don't know. I don't know how to I guess like I'd have to like sit and talk to the Pope, be like, "Yo, Popey,
to really figure out if
you gonna be
he's,
yeah." Because like another thing about being a New Yorker, bullshit detectors. Like
yeah,
we're good at it, and sit me in front of the Pope. We'll have a conversation. Are you gonna tell me you didn't know? You didn't know. You were ignorant to the fact that this lady was staying at your cardinal's place and y'all were paying her for what? And she has no educational background either. Come on, Popey. Oh,
riveting conversation.
yeah. Riveting conversation, aka with her mouth, not with words.
How else are you supposed to do it?
I could. I don't know. I'll let you know when I figure that out. I can barely talk. Apparently. Future Ashley here, during the editing process, realized that we never recorded a outro, so I'm not even using my good mic. So I apologize for any audio quality for this. But thank you for listening, and thank you to Garrett for recording again after we realized the day before that Bingo had knocked a wire loose and we lost half the episode. He had to run, so we really couldn't do like an outro, blah, blah, blah. But thank you for listening again and stick around. We're still getting our flow together. We're still working out some kinks. This is only episode 2. So, yeah, thank you.